Outsiders oppressing us. Goodness, they are on their way. Neil deGrasse Tyson shouts out, affirming the most befuddling and unfortunate disclosure made by the explorer in the previous 10 years. A disclosure that researchers were not the slightest bit ready for. Since the explorer sent back this upsetting information from space, the academic local area has been not able to rest, and everybody is strolling under a tense air. Analysts, researchers, and architects have been mixed from their stations to battle these secretive articles that Explorer W just spot. We don't have the foggiest idea where these odd objects are coming from or where they are going, yet what we can be sure of is that we have seen not at all like them previously. What are these strange articles that were as of late found by the explorer? Join us today as we examine these replies in Neil deGrasse Tyson's Explorer 1. Explorer 1 has distinguished 500 obscure objects passing by in space for just about 5 many years. Now, Explorer 1 has been cruising through the interstates of room, investigating the profound domains that ground-based telescopes have been avoided from seeing and revealing revelations that leave our mouths completely open in shock. A result of virtuoso personalities that stream in overflow at the Johns Hopkins Stream Impetus Research Center, Explorer 1 has been the brilliant courier to the strange region of intergalactic space. This designing magnum opus has opened our eyes to the brain-blowing marvels that exist in our universe. In a new improvement, Neil deGrasse Tyson has affirmed that the explorer has identified 500 obscure articles coasting calmly in space. This news came as a shock to mainstream researchers, shaking researchers as everybody started poring over the information got by the explorer. Something abnormal was blending on the skyline, and it was challenging to settle this gurgling puzzle that had puzzled even awesome of researchers. Since Neil deGrasse Tyson affirmed this revelation, various understandings have been flying in the air in an endeavor to draw a distinctive picture that makes sense of this secret. If it had been another rocket that sent the kind of dumbfounding information that was as of late communicated from space, SSTs may have questioned the legitimacy of the information. However, it is the Explorer 1 we are discussing here, the space test that has been cruising through the hot ways of room for right around 50 years now and has surpassed our assumptions like a patient who beat disease. Explorer 1 has surpassed researchers' extended life expectancy of 3 years to spend north of 45 years in space, revealing history-making revelations. All the while, the most charming part about this notorious story is that Explorer is composing this example of overcoming adversity from a distant separation from the Earth. The last time researchers checked, they saw that the space test was 145 billion miles from our planet, hurrying ceaselessly in space with no sign that it would decrease its speed at any point in the near future. Scientists say that the space test has been going at a rate 3-6 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun each year. This is one pill that researchers have viewed as a piece hard to swallow in light of the fact that normally one would have expected the space test speed to have declined enormously given the lifespan of its process in space. On a nearby look, it appears Explorer 1 is bound to be the exception with regards to this account, and it has shown proof of this again with its most recent discoveries. It was very much like each and every day for researchers when the Explorer 1 pummeled an astonishing news on their countenances, one that would stick in their recollections for a very long time. Explorer 1 had staggered on some secretive objects passing by in space. This disclosure was impromptu, which makes sense of the underlying disarray of space experts when they looked over data showing that around 500 known objects had showed up from nowhere brief. We had close to zero insight into the presence of these objects, and the following second, we had researchers breaking their cerebrums in search of a response to this puzzle that nature has arrived on their laps. Researchers were in a fix, and the fault could be followed to just a single guilty party, Explorer 1. Incidentally, researchers too knew that the answer for unwinding this mystery likewise laid on the weighty shoulders of the space test. At first, when fresh insight about this disclosure broke out, a few researchers considered the plausibility that it might have been a botch. They felt that the period of Explorer 1 might be finding it, and hence it might send wrong information back to us. Assuming that we choose to stroll on this unfurling way, it appears like a conceivable clarification given the reality that Explorer 1 was sent off as far back as 1977. That is right around 50 years of dynamic help for the benefit of mankind. One can anticipate that the space apparatus PCs would have become tired and begun to glitch, contracting in their obligations and sending back low-quality INF to the ground group. As appealing as this account sounds, Researchers have advised that we shouldn't step there since it would be a slap on the magnanimous soul of the explorer. Notwithstanding the brutality and capricious climate of room, Explorer 1 has consistently generated eye-opening information about our universe. In opposition to the rushed suppositions of cynics, the space test has kept up with its long life on account of its double repetitive PC frameworks like its twin, Explorer 2. Explorer 1 came outfitted with two arrangements of order subsystems: Flight Information Frameworks, FDS, and Elevation and Explanation Control Frameworks, ACS. This has been the mystery power behind the shuttle's solid battling soul with regards to chartering through space and uncovering disclosures. The overt repetitiveness made ready for consistent changes among frameworks and the capacity to activate lethargic PC parts, and thus preserving their life expectancy. While planning the Explorer 1, the designers back on Earth concocted an arrangement to assist the space test boost productivity, and this required that the test's instruments would need to depend on hardwired rationale. They were taking no chances when it arrived at this area since they were impeded because of time imperatives and constraints in power budgets. The electrical specialists chose the instruments would need to be created utilizing improved on frameworks that relied upon designed rationale. Thus, Explorer PC frameworks contained 6 embedded PCs integrated as a distributed framework with 3 double redundant matches. Having overcome this obstacle, researchers needed to confront the following tall facade in their way, which was maintaining the frameworks. This intimidating level was conquered by thinking of a continuous power the board plan. Here's where it gets a piece tricky. Power the board involved supporting the functional capabilities of Explorer's PC frameworks, and assuming we are being honest, this is an exhausting errand to manage given the limited power assets accessible on board the space test. It was an instance of sending a tracker into the profound wilderness to chase after wild creatures with just a bunch of cuts. By and by, researchers viewed as a way around this issue by contriving several measures to moderate and optimize power consumption on board the Explorer. A genuine illustration of these power the board measures that specialists concocted is the specific shutting down of unnecessary frameworks. Architects were constrained into going with this hard choice. Subsequently, they utilized a foundational approach to distinguish and deactivate parts or subsystems that are not vital for the shuttle's essential mission objectives. We see evidence of this when we take a brief glance at heaters associated with certain instruments that must be turned off. These heaters were initially intended to keep up with the instruments at specific temperatures so they were worked or performed at optimal. However, the story must be modified by enacting it because it enormously reduced power utilization on board the Explorer. This reduction in the space apparatus power consumption comes with an increasing influence, an extension of the Explorer's life expectancy. It's a win-win circumstance for everyone. Additionally, we ought to remember that this decision to shut down unnecessary systems is not messed with. It is a planned action that requires careful evaluation of the compromises between power preservation and the scientific objectives of the space apparatus. Whenever such a decision was taken, all hands had to be at hand. Engineers and researchers had to sit together and evaluate the impact of deactivating specific systems on the quality and availability of scientific data. Emotions weren't influencing everything here. It was completely straightforward in light of the facts within reach. The team was driven by the desire to maximize power efficiency while keeping up with the fundamental functionality of the space apparatus so it could continue to gather essential information about our universe undisturbed. Specialists and researchers alike wanted nothing to obstruct Explorer's way when it came to uncovering the profound secrets locked away in secret domains of space, mysteries that the universe has been avoiding us for centuries. However, specific power reduction isn't the only way that NASA designers are keeping the Explorer above water and working ideally in space. They had an ace secret weapon which they needed to put on the table for the advantage of the rocket. Closed by researchers, the architects needed to come up with power management procedures that are adjusted to the ever-changing states of the space apparatus climate. For example, as Explorer 1 ventures farther away from the Sun, the available solar energy experiences a plunge. We would agree that this is an issue. However, the designers came ready as they made up for this growing danger by ensuring that the rocket changed its power utilization accordingly. This adaptable methodology is a masterstroke with respect to NASA engineers and researchers since it guarantees that the available power resources are efficiently allocated to support the test's critical operations and data transfer back to Earth. Strangely, the upside news doesn't end here. as there have been continuous technical advancements and upgrades in power management which have accounted for designers to refine and streamline the power frameworks of the space apparatus over the years. A close look at these improvements would reveal that they include more efficient power distribution, further developing battery charging techniques, and advancements in power regulation and control. The execution of well-thought and planned power management techniques has opened an interesting doorway for engineers. It has made it feasible for designers to extend the operational life expectancy of Explorer 1 alongside its twin, Explorer 2. This is a major success for the academic community and the world at large. The careful allocation and management of power resources have equipped Explorer 1 with the imperative strength needed to continue exploring the depths of space unhinged and unafraid of failure. The shuttle has experienced an interesting scientific journey, one where its critical systems remain functional regardless of its advanced age. Consequently, it can send valuable information and provide groundbreaking insights back to the ground team on Earth for as long as possible. If we look back on the fact that the shuttle wasn't intended to endure more than 5 years, we would recognize how much of a significant accomplishment this is worth celebrating. The credit for this super performance of Explorer 1 lays solely on the engaged hands of researchers and architects. We can't resist the urge to laud their tenacious quest for ensuring that the rocket keeps on working optimally. They invest a lot of energy in research and evaluation of what happens in space to maintain the space apparatus' optimal functionality. However, as much as we compliment their efforts, we shouldn't disregard that space is an eccentric climate. Anything can happen there without prior notice. Some unexpected events come calling regardless of how prepared we may be. This new disclosure of 500 obscure objects belongs to this group. Notwithstanding our comprehension of what happens in deep space, nothing prepared us in advance for the stunning news that Explorer 1 brought our way. From where researchers stood, all they could see was that Explorer 1 was terrified because it felt as though these obscure objects were heading its way with plans of going after the test. As soon as researchers got the terrifying report from the Explorer, everybody was thrown into a state of profound concern. An informal, highly sensitive situation was declared as researchers and designers pondered on a reply to this mazo issue that unfolded squarely in front of them. This revelation was way out of the usual script. At best, the Explorer craft was simply intended to interact with meteoroids, asteroids, and space rocks during its journey through space, so we can grasp their initial confusion. When the Explorer craft accidentally found peculiar objects whose origin we couldn't place anywhere in the registry of space projects we have compiled over the years, actually, we could say that these obscure objects had appeared out of nowhere. The really confusing part was the possibility that the objects could be heading our way. However, in the weeks that followed, researchers soon put this possibility to rest, never to rise once more. However, they had a harder nut to deal with. They needed to respond to the question, why did the Explorer send such distressing information in the first place? When researchers identified the distressing information from the Explorer, they made sure to term it as an inconsistency. According to researchers, the expression was an excellent portrayal of the issue that the space test had brought to their doorsteps. They informed the public how the signs came in startlingly and with no clear way to figure out what was wrong. What happened was that Explorer 1 began communicating puzzling telemetry information back to Earth. As if this wasn't confusing enough, they were more stunned by the fact that the shuttle stayed receptive to orders from mission control. How would we make sense of these strange readings despite the fact that the space apparatus was responding normally? The only hiccup in this story is that there was a slight delay in correspondence. In general, researchers thought that it is confusing that the Explorer Specialty's receiving wire stayed highlighted to Earth, ensuring that it continued to receive and execute instructions.